Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. Okay, so we had a different plan for this week's episode, and then Disney Plus dropped. And there were some things on there that I wasn't quite expecting, so rather than bog down and do one, hour-long episode where it's kind of all over the place discussing all the stuff on Disney Plus, and then going into a Criterion movie from doing Slacker, and talking about Arrow, and talking about the Crisis Prelude, and talking about Tales from the Dark Multiverse, and there's just so much going on. This is going to be dedicated just to some of the cool things that I've encountered so far on Disney Plus. So, I don't remember if it was announced before Disney Plus's release, which came out on Tuesday of this week, Tuesday the 12th. There were a lot of things that were announced, so the Anna Kendrick, Bill Hader Christmas movie was announced. The Lady and the Tramp thing was announced. The live-action adaptation of Lady and the Tramp, the Imagineering, I think was announced. What wasn't announced that was interesting, let's start with this, was that they had expanded special features for Avengers Endgame. I haven't gotten a chance yet to really go through the other movies and see if there are other deleted scenes that didn't quite make the cut onto the DVD release, but Avengers Endgame does have a few deleted scenes on it that wasn't on the DVD release. And a few of these deleted scenes were ones that we'd heard about from the directors and other things. So, on the DVD release, there was the scene of Rocket talking about how the Avengers were a little incompetent. It took them so long to deal with the Chitauri during the Avengers. There was the one with the everyone taking a knee after Tony dies at the end. There was there were a few others too, like one of Tony and Pepper making lunch, I think, right before the Avengers show up, or right before Steve and all of them show up to try and help him build the quantum tunnel. There are a lot of things like that, and they're small, not really major deleted scenes, but they're, there. The deleted scenes that were included on Disney Plus include, let's start with the one that's gotten the most airtime so far, the way station scene, which in Infinity War, right after Thanos snaps, he goes to this Soul World way station. He sees Gamora at the way station, and there's a scene where she's like, "Did you do it? What did it cost?" Which is to bookend his journey. He's accomplished his mission, and he's got to reflect back on what it cost to complete that mission. And to him, it's losing the vision of his daughter the way he always saw her, which is as a small child. That's how he always envisioned her. Even as an adult, he always saw her as that young child. Tony, when he goes to the way station after he snaps, he sees a grown-up version of Morgan. Now, here's my problem with this. I think fundamentally the scene doesn't work because when Thanos does it, we're at the end of the action at that point. The fight is over. Thanos has been largely maimed. He's snapped. It's done. The mission is completed and everything. When that happens in Endgame, the fight is still ongoing. The fighting hasn't stopped. The snap happens in Infinity War during kind of a lull. In Endgame, it doesn't. The fighting is still going on. It's just the fight between Tony and Thanos has kind of stopped, but the larger fight between the Avengers and Thanos' army is still ongoing. So grinding it to a halt to do that scene would not have worked nearly as well. Beyond that, someone on Twitter posted it, and it's a better way they could have handled the scene and done the same thing would have been for Tony to snap and go to the way station, and instead of seeing Morgan, he sees Natasha. And Natasha just asks him, "Did we do it?" And he says, "Yeah," and she's like, "Good." And would have accomplished the same thing, It would have it's you would have lost the daughter parallel. But I think that would have been if you really wanted to include the scene, there was a way to do it. The second scene that I wanted to talk about that really didn't get as much airtime, and I think is a perfect example of a scene that was cut for pacing issues, despite the fact that it had a cool moment, or a few cool moments, and it's the trench scene. This scene was very obviously cut very early in production, because when you see the scene, everyone's in their motion capture suits. There's not even rough CGI. It's just, as it was on set that day. And what happens is, it's basically all of the Avengers and everyone kind of gather in this trench during the fight. And they're strategizing what they're going to do. And, like, Clint comes over with the gauntlet, and he's like, okay, we have to get rid of this. So, basically come up with a plan to get the gauntlet to the quantum tunnel, and throw it in there, and get rid of it. So that way, if once in the quantum realm, it won't be an issue anymore. So the issue with the scene is, number one, you gotta completely grind all the action to a halt to have all the heroes come into the scene. And number two, once you set everyone out from this, there are so many different aspects of the plan that are happening, that you kind of, it's hard to keep reminding the audience of what's happening. The way they did it in the final movie, where everyone kind of figures out the plan as they're going, and it's in the middle of the fight, and all of that, I wish there was a playback button, so that way I could go back to see what I was saying, because I answer a phone call, and I completely lose my train of thought. There's really no way to organically put that scene in, and when you cut it up, it's easier to keep the audience's attention between the cuts and between what's happening. Because then what's happening is the explanation of why they're doing it is happening closer to the actual event that they're doing, rather than doing it, like minutes and minutes in advance, and you gotta now keep track of who's doing what, where, when. It's a little bit more difficult to track. The third scene that's of note, there was an extended scene of Hulk and the Ancient One, which is kind of the same as the scene we got in the movie. But there was the scene, the original scene on Vormir, where they get attacked by Thanos' troops. I feel like that was, again, cut because it would have made the scene too cluttered, too much going on. I think the scene that we got was good because it kind of distilled out the emotion down to them having, they know that they can sacrifice, one of them has to do it, and both of them want to do it. So I think it fit a little bit better. But the scene's still very badass. And it would have been interesting to see that in the final movie. Which brings us to the next thing we're going to talk about, which is expanding the universe. This was something that they put up, and it was about what they're doing on Disney Plus with Marvel Studios in Phase 4. So it's all about the Marvel Studios shows, not the movies. So there's some new information. There's a lot of There's a lot of concept art, things like that. They don't really bring anything too new, and quite honestly, if you don't want to watch it, you can find all the concept art on Twitter and various entertainment news outlets. It's not really worth the 12 minutes, because it's very little information we didn't already know, and quite honestly, if you're listening to a podcast about, about entertainment in this way, there's really going to be no information you didn't already know that's going to come out of this. And really, that's the only thing that really comes out of it. There's no new information. We knew it was going to be time travel aspect of Loki. We knew U.S. Agent was going to be the bad guy. We knew it was going to be Wyatt Russell. We knew that Agent 13 was going to be in there. We knew they're making all these shows, and basically what's going to happen. It comes off like, I think it was just a recording of the announcements that they did splice together to make it look like it was one big thing. The D23 announcements and the Hall H announcements. but it's just 12 minutes of stuff you already knew in a lot of cases. Um, but there's some cool concept art in there. So if you don't want to spend the 12 minutes watching it, you can look it up on, what's it called? You can look it up. The pictures on probably comicbook.com's probably got them. But they're everywhere. Um, so, which brings us to the biggest thing that launched, in my opinion, and probably in a few other people's opinion too, The Mandalorian. Number one, I love the fact that it's a half hour. I love the half hour drama idea. Because last night I watched episode 1. This morning, on Friday, I watched episode 2. Number one, it's got a very Western vibe to it. I love that. Lone Wolf and Cub is very heavily influencing this. I love the little baby Yoda. I love... This is like 2 consecutive episodes where they had a side character who was very funny in what's it called and what they're doing. Like, I loved the IG unit in episode 1, and I loved what the baby Yoda does in this. I don't remember the name of the race for Yoda, but whatever that is, it's a baby. And I've seen people saying it actually is baby Yoda. It's not, because this takes place post Return of the Jedi, and Yoda is dead. So it is not Yoda, unless they're gonna do something where Yoda can reincarnate or something. This is not, and that wouldn't work either because we see him as a Force ghost in The Last Jedi. So no, this is not Baby Yoda. This is someone of Yoda's species, and they can use the Force, and it's really cool. But I do really like what's it called? I do really like the way the show works, because a lot of the times it's just the Mandalorian, who I don't think has a name yet, but it's not Boba Fett, and someone else who's not talking, or he's by himself, and there's a lot of silence. So it's a lot of, physical storytelling, in the same way that, like, Mad Max Fury Road has that, where there's not a lot of dialogue, it's all visual storytelling. It's a very good show. I love it. And it doesn't lean too heavily into the Star Wars aspects of it. I think that this would work as a standalone. The only thing is, I don't think on a network this would really work. I think that because this is Disney Plus, that's why the show works the way it does. Because it's on a streaming service, you're more willing to give it that leeway. And if this is the quality we're expecting, then I've got high hopes for Kenobi. I got high hopes for all of those Marvel shows. If they're going to do this half-hour format, that's great. Because I think it's better than doing like 13-hour-long episodes or 26-hour-long episodes like they do on the CW, where you end up dragging the story out and it hurts. Where it's like, if we do 8 half-hour episodes, that's 4 hours of TV. That's nothing, and that's it's longer than a movie, and it's not going to overinflate the budget. It's still going to look good, and it's going to still tell the story in a way that makes sense. And the episodic nature of it feels like you're reading a comic book. Was the way I described it when I watched it yesterday when I watched the first episode. It was like you sit here and you're watching it, and it's like you're because the way it ends, and it's like it feels like that little tag scene, and you go on to the next thing. I really like it. I love The Mandalorian so far. Episode 3 comes out next Friday, and then we move on from there. Hopefully by the time The Mandalorian ends, there's something else replacing it, because that's going to be the one big issue, is that we don't have anything big for Disney Plus, for someone like me, until next fall, when Falcon and the Winter Soldier comes out. Unless they're going to push that up and do it like summer. But even then, that's a huge gap to have nothing. Well, I guess it's the Clone Wars revival and things like that, but we'll see. If you don't have Disney Plus, it's definitely worth it. You get a week free, so if you want to use that to check out The Mandalorian before you decide if you want to buy it or not, then that's a great idea, I think. The other thing is, it's got such a huge back catalog of other movies. I watched an old Mickey Mouse short. I love Lonesome Ghost from the 30s. That's on there. A bunch of old Mickey Mouse cartoons. Virtually every Disney movie. I'm a little disappointed that Sky High's not on there. I do love that movie. A lot of Disney Channel original movies. But yeah, it is so worth it. so worth the $6.99 or $69.99 a year. That's what we'll wrap up for today. Hopefully by next week I'll be able to start the Imagineering story, because apparently that's supposed to be really good too, and we'll talk about that next week. We're going to be doing Slacker next week, because that won the poll, and we're also going to be doing Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Legion of Superheroes #1 from Brian Michael Bendis. And by that point, either Pokemon Sword or Pokemon Shield. I don't know which one I'm buying yet today, but it did come out today, and I'm going to go buy one right after this. And we'll see from there. So, until next week, have a great rest of your week. 30-Minute Reviews is a production of Multiple World Productions, available wherever you listen to podcasts. 30-Minute Reviews is hosted and produced by Adam Taylor. The opening theme is Be Epical by Carlos Estella, and the closing theme is Future Bass Uplifting by Alex Ceveza. You can follow Adam on Twitter at AdamTaylor792, as well as this podcast at 30-Minute Review.